Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for jumping on. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jordan Dux. I'm the Senior Director of National Affairs on staff with the Nebraska Farm Bureau, and just appreciate everyone spending some time with us tonight in the first of what will be several legislative webinars that we try to do to try and keep you all as up to date on what is happening in both the state capitol in Lincoln and also in Washington, D.C. So just appreciate the opportunity to chat with you all. The public policy team we'll just jump on piece by piece here and try to provide an update just for your planning purposes. The dates for the next two legislative webinars will be April 8th, also at 7 p.m., and then June 17th. And we will send those out to everyone as we do. But wanted to make sure you had those dates just on the if you've got a pen and paper to write those down. But again, we will email those out to you again April 8th and June 17th at the end of the legislative session. So again, really looking forward to chatting with you all here tonight. This webinar is going to be recorded, and so we are going to send that out to members when we're done here. But we're going to try to get this done in a quick 30 minutes. So we're going to try to fly as quick as we can to make sure we give you as much time to ask questions, and also trying to make sure that we give you some time in your evening yet, so we don't take up too much of your time. So I will ask Jay. Jay, we were going to start with Bruce, but we've had a couple of technical issues. Are we
Yep.
good to go? Do you want to go
Bruce
right
is
to Bruce and to Elizabeth?
Bruce and Elizabeth look like they're still trying to get logged in.
Okay, I can certainly go ahead and start on the federal side of things, and we can move to them here in just a second. Do you want me just to go ahead and do
Yeah,
that?
why don't you go ahead and I will see if I can get them
All
up and
right.
going here in the next five
Excellent.
minutes.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take over here and share my screen of all the screens
Just
I
to
have.
remind people that if they do have a question, they can, at the bottom of their screen, they should be able to raise their hand, or they can type a question into the chat or the question and answer function. There are boxes for that as well. So just
All
throwing
right. Excellent. Can everyone see my screen here? Or is everyone seeing the presenter view? I probably should have done that. I switched it the other way.
Yes, we are seeing the presenter view, but that's
Here, let me switch to the other one. I apologize, everyone. This is just one of those things. There we go. Now we've got it. All right, perfect. Well, good evening again, everyone. And as you all know, there is a lot happening in Washington, and I'm going to try to run through a couple things as quick as I can to make sure that everyone is up to date. And I'm going to try to speak a little quickly, but again, feel free to ask questions if you've got them. Really, to start things off. On the federal side of things, if you want to know what Congress is going to be spending time doing over the first 6 months of the year, here's a pretty good indication of what they're going to try to do. And there's a lot of words in here that maybe some of you who watch the news pretty regularly know exactly what we're talking about, and there are things that maybe are a little bit goofy. But I will tell you that the way Congress does things is we spend a lot of time talking about budgets. We talk a lot of time talking about continuing resolutions anymore. We talk about appropriations bills. And then at the beginning of a Congress, we talk about this word reconciliation, and we'll get into that in just a second. But really, this is a slide that was shared for the House Republican retreat. They want to try to get a budget resolution passed sometime yet this month, and then they have to fund the federal government past March 14th. So if you remember at the end of the year, the short-term CR that was passed funded the government through March 14th. They have to figure that out, and then they have to get through what's called reconciliation, and that is just a fancy way of talking about trying to get a way that it kind of bypasses typical Senate rules. So typically in the Senate, as a lot of us know, we say that uh, the Senate needs 60 votes in order to move a piece of legislation forward. And So from our standpoint, you have what's called reconciliation. It's simply a rule that allows a piece of legislation that has a budgetary impact only. So only things that deal with budget that have a cost associated with it, they allow that to be passed with a simple majority in the United States Senate. So a little bit different. That is what Congress will use to pass the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, to Trump tax code reauthorization that we'll get into in just a second. So that'll happen in March and April. Then in May, we have to talk about the 2026 appropriations bill. And then we're likely in June going to talk about the debt ceiling, what we need to do there, and also the NDAA, or the National Defense Appropriations Act. So a lot happening in that first 6 months, a lot of things they need to do. On the Farm Bill front, from our standpoint, the thing to remember is that at the end of last year in the CR, they passed a 1-year extension. And so that pushes us into 2025 here. And when are we going to talk about a Farm Bill and try to get that done? As you can see from the last slide, that's not in the first 6 months. And so we'll have to see what happens there if a Farm Bill gets tacked on to something. But they're going to try to, again, focus in on new funding for commodity programs, double the funding for trade promotion programs, with some reforms to nutrition. That's where the money is. They'll try to go through that. And then potentially some changes to conservation, especially as it relates to some of the climate smart money that was thrown in on the conservation side. And then to cap all that off, not only the policy changes, we've got leadership changes on both the House and the Senate Ag Committee, with Republicans taking over the Senate. They have John Boozman, who is ranking member, who is now the new chairman of the Senate Ag Committee. G.T. Thompson, chairman of the House Ag Committee, was chair before. We have a very good working relationship with Congressman Thompson. And then a Minnesota flair for ranking members, the Democrats on the committee, Ms. Klobuchar from Minnesota, ranking member of Senate Ag, and Angie Craig, the ranking member also from Minnesota, ranking member on the House Ag Committee side. So big things happening there. The important thing to remember, though, is we included in that CR, I talked about funding was included through March 14th, but there was also, and I've gotten a lot of questions about it, that economic disaster assistance, that $10 billion that was included in there, as well as $21 billion on top of that for weather-related disaster assistance. That passed at the end of last year. Those checks will be issued sometime in the month of March, is what we continue to hear. I have the payment rates on there. We ranked right now fifth at getting a total of $627 million of that $10 billion for economic disaster assistance. And then you've got the weather related, and that is for disasters that happened in 2023 and 2024. And drought will be included in that. There's a lot of questions yet as to how that program will operate, what that looks like, what sign up looks like. There's a lot that is out there that I can't answer at this time, but just know that the 10 billion, they're still pushing for March. 21 billion in weather related disaster, that is going to come probably sometime in March, but we'll have to see what happens there. And then that CR did not include two big things we've really tried to work on: a fix for California Proposition 12, and then also year-round E15. I mentioned the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and that is a big item on our to-do list, and it's going to be the big one you see. We launch a very large campaign, a grassroots campaign, that we're going to need your help and to submit some comments to Congress. The individual income tax rates, where they sit today, the doubling of the estate tax exemption that we secured in 2017, that expires if Congress does nothing. Bonus depreciation, which is already going away. Section 179, small business expensing. 199A, the ability to deduct your property taxes from your federal income tax. All the things that we really fought extraordinarily hard, that you helped us fight for in 2017, all go away if Congress fails to act before the end of the year. So that's going to be a big one for us, and we're really going to need your help on that one. The trade side of things is another big one, and certainly one we've seen action for the past couple weeks, and one we saw more action today. And the question is always, what's President Trump going to do? The one thing I will tell you that we are continuing to, our mode in which we're trying to operate is we're reminding everybody that what the president says to the media, what the president says on Truth Social, what the president says maybe on Twitter or X, those aren't governing documents. We're going to wait and see what the governing documents look like before we react to what the president's talking about. Obviously, he uses tariffs, the threat of tariffs, and the utilization of tariffs as a negotiating tactic, a pretty substantial one, a pretty heavy hammer. And we've seen that with the threat with Canada and Mexico. Those tariffs were delayed for 30 days. The 10% tariff on Chinese goods continues. He did implement that one. And then a new tariff tariff on steel and aluminum products that started today, and also some new things that some reciprocal tariffs for countries that have tariffs on our products. The president's not afraid to utilize tariffs. We see that, we know that, and we're going to really try to focus in there, and certainly kind of communicate with the president what our concerns are, what we'd like to see. But ultimately, we want to see new free trade agreements. That we have a USMCA review with Canada and Mexico. While we as an organization, really are not massive fans of tariffs. At the same time, we know that our trade relationship, even with our closest trading partners, is far from perfect. You did see Mexico rescind their GMO corn ban. That was a good thing. Mexico, we really struggled with that one, and it was good to see that rescinded. Obviously, that happened after the president threatened tariffs. And then also our trading relationship with Canada is also not perfect, whether it be dairy or lumber or some of those kinds of things. So that's a big one. I talk about some potential free trade agreements. We'll have to see what happens there, but that's where we're at there. I mentioned climate initiative just because there's a lot of things you've seen and probably read a lot on 40B, 45Z, 45Q, the future of all these Inflation Reduction Act monies. That's all still up in the air, and all the private company initiatives that are out there, the 50% carbon reduction plan by the year 2030 and 100% carbon neutral by 2050. Obviously, the regulatory pressure, the political pressure is gone from there. And so we'll see what happens on that front and what goes, what stays. Republicans are going to try to use that Inflation Reduction Act money to try to pay for some of the things they want to do. So we'll watch that very closely. And then, as you all know, we have a lot of new faces in D.C. With the new secretarial designees, the big ones that make all the headlines, all your cabinet officials, but the really ones to pay attention to, the ones we work very closely with. Not that we don't work with the secretaries, but the undersecretaries, the assistant secretaries, the deputy secretaries, all those folks who make the trains run, if you will. Those are going to be ones we watch very closely, and we're going to be working on those. We'll have a new FSA director. We'll have a new state FSA committee, a rural development director. Jim Macy was announced as the EPA Region 7 administrator. That's a big win for us. Jim obviously was our Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy director for a number of years, and EPA Region 7 is the region that we are a part of, along with Iowa, Missouri, and Kansas. And so the ability to work with someone we know well in a position that we've got a lot of work to do is going to be a big win for us. We're looking forward to it, and we're looking to tackling all the regulatory and EPA issues that are out there. And then lastly, Interior, because it kind of hits to that regulatory side of things, ESA, energy development. There's a lot of positions out there. We're watching all of them very closely. We're ready to work with this new administration, all the things that we have yet to do. And then I'll ask Jessica. Is Jessica Shelburne on? We had some things for her and some things we wanted her to hit on very quickly. Jessica, are you there
Yes,
to hit on
I
a couple
am.
of just the grassroots asks on all those things we're going to talk about?
I am here, Jordan. Thank you.
Perfect.
Really quick, we are doing a grassroots and media tour with President McHarg tomorrow through Thursday, and then a stop in Valentine on Saturday. So if you are interested in that, please feel free to reach out. I know Jordan has my email up there, and I can fill you in on the tour. Also, we would love everyone to sign up for the legislative conference on February 25th here in Lincoln. It is a full day of activities, and then wraps up at the state office with barbecue and brews. And I think we're up to 20 state senators, I think, have RSVP'd so far. And then finally, if your county is interested in doing a day at the Capitol, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you set that up. And the last thing that I would say is that QR code in the bottom of your screen, if you would please scan that so that you can sign up to receive our text alerts, we would really appreciate it. That is the best way and the fastest way for us to be able to communicate you as things start moving forward, and we need your help reaching out to those senators. It will take you to a text message. If you hit send, you are then registered, but then it will also send you a link. If you could fill out that information, just so that we know who we are texting, we would really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Jordan.
Right. Thank you, Jessica. Really appreciate it. We'll hit on questions maybe at the very end. I know I ran through a lot quickly, and I know there's a lot happening on the federal side of things, but we'll hit on questions after we go through some state stuff with Bruce. Unless, Jay, you want me to delay a little bit with our technical issues.
We should be ready to go. Elizabeth should be on as well, and she can share her
All right.
screen.
I will stop sharing mine and I will let Elizabeth take over.
All right, bear with me here. All right, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Now we can. Perfect.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jordan, Jessica, Elizabeth for helping out. I think maybe if Craig forgot to tell me, but I might have got my pink slip because I can't access any of this. Everything's blocked on my computer, but thank God for Jay Ferris. He helped get this set up. So we're going to dive into some of the state legislative update, some of the more notable bills that are being heard in committee this week. And I know that Jessica has already talked about the legislative conference on February 25th. Want to make sure that you're all thinking about and aware that we can help schedule days at the Capitol for you to engage with your senator or others as well on these important issues. I didn't catch all of what Jordan said, but our public policy team focus is on advocacy, relationship building, and policy development. And I assume that Jordan probably talked about the policy development a little bit. So Elizabeth, if you could move us to the next slide. Okay, we're going to go through 6 or 7 bills here relatively quickly. Some of our highest priorities in this legislative session are to continue to work on reducing the state's over-reliance on property taxes, growing the livestock industry, and capturing the opportunities of the bioeconomy. But I'll let you know that we have well over 100, 125, maybe even 150 bills out of the 715 that were introduced that are on our radar screen, but it's a much more narrow focus than that. But we're tracking a lot of things, and we want to touch on the highlights with you. So Senator Tanya Storr has introduced the livestock sighting bill. We helped put that together for her. It does 3 things that we hope will help streamline the process for counties in granting or denying conditional use permits for livestock facilities. It requires the county attorney to provide commissioners and supervisors guidance regarding conditional use permit standards, which basically means help them understand what they have jurisdiction over and what they don't. It also creates a timeline that I would say is roughly 120 days for both the Planning Commission and then another 120 days, give or take a few exceptions to that for the board to approve or deny this. And it also creates a very objective standard. It's called a rebuttable presumption, but what that requires is that a county cannot deny an application unless they have a finding of fact that the applicant will in fact violate either local, state, or federal rules. They have to assume or presume that the applicant will live by the appropriate state level or state, local, and federal requirements. We testified on LB 303 today. It's an incremental step into reforming TIOSA. It makes a couple changes to some of the existing parts of the TIOSA, the school aid funding program. It would increase foundation aid for schools from $1,500 to $1,590, which is a 6% increase. It would also lower the maximum levy from $1.05 to $1.02, and it creates a school finance reform commission. This is also the governor's bill. The governor testified in support of it. And by and large, practically every educational entity in the state supported it, notwithstanding Omaha Public Schools. But I mean, this may not be a shock to anyone if you're tracking this, but they pretty much oppose anything that would require them to give up any property taxes to fund schools. So I think that bill is going to move and move well. over 2 years. If 100% of the money that's going into this project or this proposal were to turn into property tax relief, it would amount to about $112 million of property tax relief over those 2 years. We reminded the committee that simultaneous to doing this, we hope that they are much more aggressive and keep in mind that the fact that property taxes will probably go up nearly 600 million over the same time period. So we still have a lot of work to do, but this is a start on an incremental approach. One other thing is that if we have enough money, they will probably put some more money into the upfront funding of the new Tier 2 program. Hopefully that's in the neighborhood of $100 or $200 million, but that's going to depend on how we deal with the budget. Next slide, please. Senator DeKay, he has introduced a bill on behalf of the governor to ban lab-grown protein. It would prohibit cultivated protein food products under the Nebraska Pure Food Act, as well as make it a violation of the Deceptive Trade Practice Act that we have in place if somebody were to manufacture or sell lab-grown protein. We are going to be neutral on this, but seriously suggesting to the committee, and the hearing is next week, but suggesting to the committee that instead, consistent with our policy, that we would support an aggressive labeling practice regarding this. What we would need to do is nail down, as to the greatest degree possible, an ironclad definition of what is meat, and then define this particular product as not meat. And then the label would say in bold print on the top that this is not meat. Jokingly, I want it to say consume at your own risk, but I'm not going to do that. So we would work on that. And then if somebody were to try and sell that in the state or manufacture it, our policy says that we're also against using state funds to do anything along the lines of developing this or selling it, that then it would be a violation of the Pure Food Act or the Deceptive Trade Practice Act. But so for those of you that participated in that discussion at the annual meeting, you recall where our members landed on that. You are members, and so that's what we're trying to do there. Senator Storer has another bill which would ban electronic ID tags that are manufactured or tied to what do I want to say? Our adversaries, our international adversaries, the nefarious actors such as China and others, things like that. Last Friday, we had an in-depth conversation with our board, whereby they talked to us about that it may not be the electronic identification tag. More so, it might be our bigger concern are the ones that read those tags, as well as how we keep that data. Tomorrow, when I testify on this particular bill, we're going to be suggesting that this needs to move to an interim study so that we can work on this, specifically on this, but also in partnership, hopefully in partnership with a ag data security bill that Senator Jacobson from North Platte introduced. He's already said he wants that to become an interim study because we need to do a lot more work on that. And based upon our experience over the last 4 years working with the FBI, Homeland Security, and other entities in the state, we believe that we can bring a lot to the table to help inform the senators and help them work towards a much more comprehensive and detailed policy on those. So that's what we will be talking about tomorrow in that committee. Okay, Elizabeth? Thank you. Another one. These are two bills that we're going to oppose, but we're willing to listen, we're willing to talk about it, and we're willing to work towards a solution. Senator Brandt introduced LB 317 on behalf of the governor. The governor is trying to merge the Department of Energy and Environment as well as the Department of Natural Resources. It would turn it into the Department of Water, Energy, and Environment. What the board decided last Friday was that we would oppose this until a study is done which confirms the specific efficiencies and cost savings associated with the merger. So one of the things that some of those that are working in this arena have advised us about is this may be a good thing as long as we have a governor and the director of this new agency that are our friends. But it may be a very bad thing in the case where we would have an adversarial governor or a director of that new agency. So there's a lot of things that we're going to be concerned about, or we are concerned about, and we're going to try and lay those out in the hearing later this week to say these are the things that we really need to address before we rush into this. It could be a good thing. It may not be. We still, the jury's still out on that. And then LB 646, introduced by Senator Teresa Ibaugh, would exempt feedlots from the Brand Act. And then our policy is quite clear on this. We believe that the Brand Committee has to be adequately funded. And it also says specifically that we oppose exempting registered feedlots from being required to comply with the Brand Act. So what we are saying, and we'll talk about this again tomorrow in the Ag Committee, and the cattlemen, we're in lockstep with them as we speak right now, but we're going to oppose this until there's a resolution that all parties can agree to. That is a high bar to get to, but with something as important as this is to a lot of our producers and the state, we need to take a much deeper look into this. There are amendments that supposedly are being drafted. We have not seen them yet. So our position tomorrow will be, you know what, we're going to oppose this. Some people think that we ought to be neutral, but our policy is quite straightforward that we need to oppose it. Plus, politically, when it comes to negotiating, if we said we are neutral, we lose a lot of negotiating leverage. And so that's the position that we're going to take, but we're willing to listen and we want to work with all the parties involved. Next slide. And last that I'll talk about this evening is the 2025 state budget. This long session, we have to establish the budget for the next biennium, which begins July 1st of this year. We're going in to this debate with the state having less than the necessary money, $432 million less than the required cash reserves to start the budget. So there's going to be a lot of work by the Revenue Committee, the Appropriations Committee, the governor, us, and many others to work on a balanced budget, but that it also provides property tax relief according to the governor's budget. If everything he proposed we got, were to be achieved, then we'd be looking at somewhere between $300 million of property tax relief this year, this first year of the biennium, and $370 million in the next one. It also focuses on education funding. I talked about LB 303, that already, that's primarily the governor's bill. And as I said, he testified in support of that today. Also, the governor's budget recommendations reverses several recent appropriations incentives that have been passed over the last 4 or 5 years. And this will be an exercise in weighing our gains and losses, and so we haven't specifically said where we're going to be on any of the specific items of it, but we will be testifying next Tuesday to talk about the gains that we would have to see or that we'd want to see before we would be willing to give up some of the things that the governor is talking about cutting back on. If somebody's thinking of asking about an example, the governor's budget proposal would not eliminate the Beginning Farmer Program, but it would cut back some of the funding for it. And quite honestly, that program hasn't been fully utilized since we increased the funding for it. But there's also a lot of things that carve back or grab back some of the incentives that were passed. Since the state is reducing the income tax rate, those incentives for business aren't needed as much as they used to be. And so those are going to be the things that we're working with the Appropriations Committee throughout this process to achieve a balanced budget that delivers property tax relief. And with that, I'm done with our formal comments on those slides. I'll turn it back to Jordan or whomever, however we handle this, to field questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Bruce. Again, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand. And you can do that at the bottom of the screen there. Jay, do we have any questions?
I'm not seeing anybody that has any questions yet.
All right. Now we aren't going to turn this off right at 7:30, which would be right now if folks have questions. But again, we want to keep it. We want to make sure we're respectful of everyone's time. Any questions at all? Again, if you have a question, right at the bottom of your screen there, it allows you the ability to raise your hand. I'll ask one final time here, just in case anyone has anything. Oh, there's one. We have a question on LB 484, Bruce.
Okay,
It just
help me
says-
out. I don't,
It just says LB 484. That's the only one it says.
okay,
So, let's see.
Steve, you want me to turn you? I'm gonna allow you to talk, Steve. And maybe you can explain it a little further.
Am I on? Sorry, I'm driving. So you.
Oh, nope, you're good to go. We can hear you.
We can hear you, Steve.
LB 484 was introduced by Quick. It would strike the language that currently exists in the statute that says if a farm goes to a solar or a wind farm, that it gets reclassified away from ag land. He would take it and make it still be ag land, which means it would be property taxed at the 65% rate.
okay. What's that?
So I'm asking, do we have a position on that particular bill, or?
Yeah, we
So-
oppose that.
Have you seen anything on a schedule as far as hearings or anything like that?
It hasn't gotten
Yeah, there's
published as a hearing yet.
there's no hearing scheduled yet. There's also no fiscal note for it yet. But when it's not scheduled for a hearing, and Steve, you probably know this, but they don't get to the fiscal notes until that gets scheduled for a hearing because they're rushing as fast as possible in the fiscal office to put together the fiscal notes. But we'll have more details in a subsequent update. And I'd also encourage you, if you're not receiving our daily updates from the legislature, please let us know and we will add you to the list so that you can get our daily updates. What we put in there are the hearings, notable hearings, for usually a week in advance. That's as far as they're required to schedule them. So we do that. We give an update on the floor activity and any other notable events and upcoming important dates, such as our legislative conference and other things. But yeah, I have, appreciate the question and would encourage you, if you're not receiving those daily updates, to let us know.
Any other questions? Again, you can raise your hand. You can type it into the Q&A part. Any other questions? Once, twice.
Start calling on people like teachers do in school.
There you go. We could do that.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll end it there. I just appreciate everyone jumping on tonight. And again, we have all of our contact information on the website. And again, as I'll close this thing out, we really wanted just to try to provide an opportunity for members to jump on, hear directly from us here at Nebraska Farm Bureau, and we can walk through some of the things, the latest. And I know that a lot of
We
things
do have
happen.
another question, Jordan.
Oh, Mike Dvorak, there we go. Mike, we will raise your hand. I see. Jay, do you want to enable him to speak?
He needs to ask He needs to unmute his microphone.
Okay,
Okay.
there we go. How
There
about
you go,
that?
Mike.
There we go.
All
Go
right.
right ahead.
Yeah. Just my question is, I was about 2 or 3 minutes late, and I missed some of the first stuff. Is the presentation somewhere online I could look at what was up?
Yes, so we are actually what we're going to do, Mike, is we're going to email the full presentation out to everybody. And so you'll have a chance to get the full audio and get the full update. So yes, we
Okay, perfect.
will send that around.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Tom Weber. Tom Weber wanted to know what's happening with ESU funding.
Well, there is
Bruce?
a bill that was introduced to eliminate property taxing authority for ESUs and move that to a similar funding mechanism like we did with community colleges a couple years ago. We do support eliminating their property taxing authority. I can't remember specifically if it would give them a 3 or 3.5% increase for funding. Jay
Three.
says it's 3,
3.5. I think,
3.5%.
if I remember correctly.
Uh,
That bill had a hearing last week.
yeah. So we weighed in on that in support of it. I would say that the whole ag leaders group, and for those of you who don't know who the ag leaders are, that's 9 ag organizations that when we can, we collectively testify in mass. That is Cattlemen, Dairy Association, Pork Producers, Sorghum, Wheat, Corn, Soybeans, Renewable Fuels Nebraska, and Farm Bureau, which represents the bulk of the farm gate receipts for the state.
All right. Thank you, Bruce. Any other questions? I'll ask again. Any other questions? Again, we are going to email this out to everyone. All right. Unless I see one here again when I close it out, again, thank you all for jumping on. Really appreciate the opportunity. Again, you can just go on our website. All of our phone numbers and contact information are there. You've seen our email addresses up a couple times. Just feel free, shoot us an email, give us a call. We are more than happy to walk through anything that is happening at either the state or the federal level. Maybe this is where we will end it. Again, Mark is going to be traveling around the state here over the next few days with some of us. So feel free, talk to your field staff person, talk to Jessica if you want that full schedule. But thank you all again very much for jumping on and spending some time with us this evening. Hopefully you all found this interesting. Hopefully you found it worthwhile. Please, again, feel free to reach out if you have any further questions. But with that, we'll say good night. Again, we're going to do 2 more of these. But I think we'll continue on. And again, feel free to reach out. Thanks, everyone, and have a great evening.